By 11:15 that morning, I was signing a contract that would make me Chief Operating Officer of Hale Automotive Group. My hand didn't shake as I wrote my name. It felt strangely calm, like my body had already accepted what my mind was still catching up to. Marcus Hale watched me from across the table, his expression steady, almost relieved, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. But this wasn't where my day began. It started at 7 o'clock sharp, when my phone rang so loudly it cut straight through the quiet of my kitchen. I didn't even have coffee yet. I saw the caller ID and answered out of habit. "Helen Mercer," I said, trying to sound awake. Blake didn't bother with a greeting. With that attitude, "Don't bother coming in." I blinked, stunned. What attitude? There was a pause. And then I heard it. His hand must have slipped away from the receiver. A muffled voice behind him, irritated and impatient. "You have to scare this stubborn old lady?" The words hit harder than I expected. I felt them settle somewhere deep in my chest, heavy and humiliating. Stubborn old lady. After 12 years building his dealership from the ground up, I didn't say anything for a moment. I let the silence stretch. Then I exhaled, steady and quiet. "Okay," I said. "Good luck." And I hung up before he could answer. For a long moment, I just stood there, phone still in my hand, heart pounding hard enough to hurt. Anger rose in slow waves, mixing with something sharper clarity. If that was all I was to him, then I had already stayed too long. I sat at the table, opened my contacts, and found the name I had ignored for years, Marcus Hale. He once told me, half joking, that if Blake ever pushed me too hard, he would steal me without hesitation. I typed, "Blake told me not to come in. If you ever meant what you said, I'm available." His reply came almost instantly. "Come in this morning. I've been waiting for this day." I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door without looking back, knowing exactly where my day was headed next. The drive to Marcus's office should have cleared my head, but Blake's whisper kept replaying, sharp as glass. Stubborn old lady. It wasn't new, just the first time I'd heard it spoken aloud without a filter. I had spent years pretending not to notice the hints. Blake calling my reports old school, even when those reports were the reason we survived 2 brutal quarters. Him dismissing my projections with, "You're set in your ways." Helen, let the younger team innovate. Whenever I pushed back, he'd sigh like I was exhausting him, like logic itself was outdated. Then HR joined the chorus. One afternoon, Rachel from HR stopped me in the hallway with that sugary voice she used for uncomfortable topics. "Have you ever considered transitioning into an advisory role? It might be a good time to let the younger team take the wheel." She said it like a suggestion. It felt like a countdown. None of them cared that I had built the entire operations structure from day one. 12 years of vendor mapping, inventory redesign, contract negotiations, emergency patches no one else could even see. I was the one who figured out how to save us more than $200,000 a year on procurement. I kept the dealership alive more times than Blake ever admitted, and I knew exactly when things truly shifted. It was the afternoon Blake announced he wanted to buy a failing franchise 2 hours south. He called it an expansion opportunity. I had the data pulled within a day. Loss projections, debt ratios, market collapse, every sign pointed to disaster. In the board meeting, I laid out the facts. "It will drain our reserves." I said, "It could sink us entirely." Blake's face tightened, and I realized I had embarrassed him in front of his own investors. From that day on, every conversation with him felt colder. Every suggestion of mine was negative thinking. Every question was resistance. His ego had taken the blow, but I was the one who kept paying for it. Hearing that whisper that morning only confirmed what my instincts had known for months. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a follower. And I was done being afraid of stopping him. I sat in my parked car with my hands still wrapped around the steering wheel, the last of Blake's voice fading into something dull and distant. I opened my phone and stared at a name I had never expected to contact: Marcus Hale, owner of Hale Automotive Group, competitor, rival, and the only person who had ever looked me in the eye at industry events and said, "You run your numbers cleaner than anyone in Richmond." I typed slowly. At first, Blake told me not to come in this morning, then deleted it. I didn't want to sound desperate. I didn't want to sound broken. So I wrote only the truth. Blake made it clear my position is done. If you ever meant what you said about needing someone operationally disciplined, I'm available. My thumb hovered over the send button. I thought of my mortgage, my savings, my age, every quiet fear I had tried to outrun. Then I remembered Blake whispering "stubborn old lady," and something inside me hardened. I hit send. The reply came in less than 2 minutes. "Come now. I've admired your work for years." My breath caught. Years. I read it again, half certain I misinterpreted it. A second message followed before I could think. "I tried to recruit you before. You were too loyal to leave." That stunned me more than Blake's call had. Too loyal. I put my phone down and let my forehead rest against the steering wheel. Maybe loyalty had been the trap all along. I started the engine and pulled out onto Broad Street, the city blurring past as adrenaline took over. I felt nervous, but underneath it was a pulse of something unfamiliar: relief, freedom, maybe even bravery. When I reached Hale Automotive's downtown office, I didn't smooth my hair or check my reflection. I walked inside with my shoulders steady. I wasn't going there to beg for a lifeline. I was going to negotiate the future Blake never believed I deserved. Marcus met me at the entrance himself, pushing through the glass doors before the receptionist could even stand. "Helen," he said, extending his hand with a kind of certainty that steadied me. "Come in. No assistant. No waiting room. No tests." He walked me straight to his office as if we had already started the conversation days ago, the moment the door closed behind us. He didn't waste time. "I know exactly what you built over there," he said. "The vendor pipeline. That was you. The restructuring of the used car division. Also you. And the 3 managers everyone praises. You trained them from scratch." I swallowed hard. Hearing it spoken plainly felt like stepping into sunlight after years spent indoors. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Blake talked about you at a conference last fall," he added. "Said you were brilliant, but needed to be reminded of hierarchy." He laughed about putting you in your place. My chest tightened. So the whisper wasn't new. It was just the first time he slipped and let me hear it. Marcus watched my reaction carefully. He was threatened. "Helen, you outgrew the space he gave you." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. He could see it in my eyes. He tapped a pen lightly on his desk. "Let me ask you something. If you had full control, full authority, no limitations, what would you fix first?" The answer rose in me like instinct. I outlined the inefficiencies, the outdated forecasting models, the vendor redundancies, and the ways to tighten inventory turnover without burning out staff. My voice was steady, unhindered, like it had been waiting for years to be used properly. Marcus didn't interrupt. When I finished, he nodded once. Decisive. "Good," he said. "Then be my chief operating officer." I stared at him, stunned into stillness. "I am serious," he continued. "I want you running operations by Monday. You will report to me and no one else." By 11:15 that morning, I was signing the contract with my full name and a steady hand, the ink drying on a position Blake never would have offered me. I spent my first afternoon at Hale Automotive sitting in a borrowed office, still learning the rhythm of the place, when Marcus stopped by my door. "If you need time to settle in, take it," he said. "Your reputation is already working ahead of you." I nodded, though I wasn't sure what he meant until I opened my email. Out of courtesy, I'd sent a short message to a handful of long-term clients. Nothing dramatic. Just, I wanted you to hear it from me. I've joined Hale Automotive Group as Chief Operating Officer. Thank you for your partnership over the years. Within an hour. My phone rang. Helen, it's Reed, the owner of a boutique hotel chain. Tell me you're staying in Richmond. I am, I said carefully. Good. Then we're shifting all our fleet work to Hale. Where you go. We go. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. Before I could respond, he added, and Helen. They were idiots to lose you. Then he hung up. I barely had time to put my phone down before it rang again. This time it was Dr. Avery, a surgeon who replaced his cars more often than most people replaced appliances. I heard Blake pushed you out, he said. Send your new contact info. I only work with people who know what they're doing. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed steady. I'll send everything today. By late afternoon. A third call came, this one from a vendor I'd known for more than a decade. Helen, I just sent termination papers to Blake's office. He said, no vendor with self-respect keeps working for a company that treats you like that. Expect a copy of our new agreement by tomorrow. After each call, I added names to a small spreadsheet on my laptop, not for revenge, not to boast, just to keep track of the truth. Marcus stepped in later with 2 coffees. Busy first day. You could say that, I answered. He smiled. You're bringing gravity. Helen, people orbit around you. The first signs reached me 2 days later, a quiet ripple that grew with every hour. It started with a text from Julia, one of the junior analysts Blake always ignored. Do you still have access to the shared drive? Nothing matches? Inventory is a mess. I typed back. No access anymore. Good luck. Julia. She answered immediately. We need more than luck. Before I could put my phone down, Marcus stepped into my doorway. You hear anything from your old place? He asked, watching my face like he already knew the answer. Just chaos, I said. Inventory errors. Orders disappearing. Vendors confused. He gave a low exhale. That happens when the person holding everything together isn't there anymore. An hour later, another message came in, this one from a vendor who was usually calm to the point of boredom. We sent 2 deliveries. They claimed they never arrived. Your old team is panicking. Then another manager in their used car division called us twice, asking about parts we do not even supply. I forwarded nothing. I didn't need to. The picture was clear. Blake, of course, had his own explanation. One of the staff sent me a screenshot from the group chat. Blake market instability. Happens every year. I almost laughed. He would blame the weather before he admitted losing me caused anything. That afternoon, 2 familiar faces appeared at Hale's front desk, Tanya and Luis, both standing stiffly like they weren't sure if they were allowed to breathe. Helen, Tanya said, we can't stay there. Everything fell apart the minute you left. Luis nodded. Nobody knows the systems. They're guessing at everything. We want to work somewhere that isn't built on ego. I led them to Marcus's office, and he didn't hesitate. If Helen trusts you, you're in, he said. Watching them sign their onboarding papers felt like a knot loosening in my chest. I added their names to my spreadsheet later, another line of truth, another reminder I hadn't imagined my own worth. My confidence wasn't just coming back. It was rebuilding itself faster than Blake's entire operation was collapsing. The call came just after 9 in the morning. I recognized the number instantly. I let it ring until the final vibration, then watched as it lit up again. This time, I answered. Helen. Thank God, Blake said, breath quick and uneven. We need to talk. I didn't offer a greeting. I'm listening. I heard you joined Hale Automotive. His voice scraped thin, caught between disbelief and fear. You should have told me. I thought you made it clear you didn't want me coming in. I said. He inhaled sharply. Look, we overreacted. It wasn't personal. I closed my eyes, steadying myself. Blake, you told someone you had to scare me. Do you remember that, what no, that's not? You said, I repeated, slow and calm. You had to scare this stubborn old lady. The silence on the line stretched long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat, When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller. That was taken out of context. It was taken directly from your mouth. Another pause. Then, desperation slid in. Helen, the point is, things aren't good here. Orders are backed up. Vendors are angry. The staff is confused. We need stability. We need you. No, I said. Just that. I can fix the situation. He rushed on. We can do a full reset. Higher salary. A new title. Full respect. I mean that. You don't know what respect looks like. I answered. And you didn't underestimate me. You miscalculated me. Helen, I'm not coming back. I could hear him trying to form another excuse, another offer, another way to pull me back into the same old trap. I didn't wait for it. I ended the call with the same steady finality he'd tried to use on me a week earlier. But this time, my hand didn't shake when I put the phone down. The morning after Blake's call, I walked into Hale Automotive with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. No fear, no second guessing. Just work the kind I had never been allowed to do freely. Marcus met me outside my office. Full authority, he said. If you believe it needs fixing, fix it. I trust your instincts. I nodded. Then I'm starting today. I pulled the operations team into a quick meeting. We're redesigning the workflow. I said, clean, simple, data-driven. No more gut decisions. A few raised eyebrows at first, but they listened. When someone hesitated, I didn't bite back. I explained the numbers. I showed them the impact, and slowly, they leaned in. By the end of the week, forecasting errors dropped. Inventory moved faster. 2 managers stopped by my office after hours. You make this place make sense, one of them said. We actually know what we're doing now. The other added. Sales climbed steadily through the month, not explosive growth, but the type that lasts. People stopped hovering around Marcus for answers and started coming to me instead. He noticed. One afternoon, he stood at my door and said, You're changing the entire tone of this company. People work better when they're not afraid. I told him. Outside of operations, something else began to grow. Younger women sought me out quietly, some from inside Hale, some from other dealerships. They told me about managers who dismissed their input, about being called emotional or difficult whenever they challenged a bad decision. I met them for coffee after work, listened to them, taught them what no one had taught me. When the Richmond Regional Leadership Forum invited me to speak, I almost said no. Then Marcus said, It's time people hear your voice. On stage. I looked out at the room and said the line that had carried me out of Blake's shadow. Being called stubborn just means you refused to let someone else decide who you are. The applause felt steady and warm, like a door opening that should have opened years ago. The journalist arrived on a Thursday afternoon. A quiet woman named Mara Holt, who carried a small recorder and a notebook filled with meticulous handwriting. She shook my hand firmly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Ms. Mercer, your story seems significant. I'll tell you what I can, I said. But I'm not here to attack anyone. I'm not looking for revenge quotes. She replied, Just the truth. We sat in a conference room. She pressed the recorder's button. When did you know you needed to leave your previous position? When my work stopped meaning anything to the people in charge, I said. When my age became a label instead of an asset. And the transition to Hale Automotive fast. I admitted. Marcus knew my work. He offered trust before I even asked for it. She scribbled something. And the timing. Before lunch, I nodded. Before 11:15 in the morning. What did that feel like? Like someone finally opened the window in a room I didn't realize I was suffocating in. Mara sat back. I think people need to hear that. We talked for nearly an hour. I spoke plainly, no venom, no dramatics. I told her what I built, what I endured, and what I walked toward. I didn't mention Blake's whisper, but I didn't protect him either. A week later, the article went live. The title hit me harder than I expected. The executive Richmond threw away, and the COO. She became before lunch. My phone buzzed nonstop. Vendors forwarded it. 2 competitors shared it on their pages. Marcus walked into my office with a grin. "Told you the city was watching," he said. By the next day, I heard whispers from inside my old dealership. The board had called an emergency meeting, an internal review had begun, and a rumor spread that 2 of Blake's locations might close by the end of the quarter. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I kept working, letting the truth do what it always does once it finally steps into the light. The email arrived just after dawn, the subject line stripped of pride, requesting a conversation. I opened it slowly, already knowing what I would find. "Helen, please. We need to talk. The situation is worse than I expected. 2 lenders have pulled support. 3 managers resigned this week. Vendors will not return our calls. If there is any part of you willing to help, just one conversation. Please. No excuses this time. No false confidence. Just the collapse he tried so hard to pretend was market instability." Marcus noticed my expression as he passed my office. "Bad news from Blake?" he asked. "Predictable news," I said. He nodded once, as if the universe had simply kept its balance. I stared at Blake's message for another moment, remembering the whisper he thought I wouldn't hear, scare this stubborn old lady, and the way my hand trembled when I hung up that morning. It didn't tremble now. I typed 2 words. "Good luck." Then I sent it and closed my laptop. Weeks passed, and the fallout surfaced piece by piece. Tanya walked into my office one afternoon holding her phone. "It's official," she said. "Blake's main dealership just went on the market." Luis let out a low whistle from the doorway. Never thought I'd see the day. Neither did I not because I doubted the outcome, but because I doubted Blake would ever admit defeat, even when it swallowed him whole. Meanwhile, Hale Automotive posted the strongest quarterly numbers in its history. Marcus joked that I had rebuilt half the company in 3 months. I told him the company had rebuilt itself once it let people breathe. One evening, after a training session, a young analyst I'd been mentoring lingered by the door. "Helen," she said softly. "They call me stubborn. I think it's a compliment now." I felt something warm settle in my chest. "It is," I told her. She smiled and walked out, and I stood there alone, thinking of the woman Blake once tried to scare into silence. They called me a stubborn old lady. They should have been scared of the woman I would become.